This will be my first part in a series I hope to create about different league topics. Today, I'll be talking about strong champions and how win rate information should be viewed. What makes a champion good? Is it their overall win rate or their skill expressiveness? Maybe it's based on the potential of the champion. I think there's many metrics to gauge champion, and I want to share some of that information with you. I want to start off by saying that all this information was accessed from Lolalytics on June 7th, 2021 on patch 11.11. Let it be known that all this information is bound to change, and the information for pick and win rate are collected using the default parameters for everything except for ranks, which I changed to all rank to help paint a broader picture. In a general sense, win rate is what most people judge a champion on, but there's a problem with that. If I were to say a champion has an overall 54.5% win rate in the bot lane, would you say that champion is OP? Who would you guess that champion is? Jhin, Ezreal, Sivir? Well, if you said any of those champions, you would be wrong, because it's Karthus. With an overall 0.1% pick rate, there is a reason why win rate alone cannot be used to gauge champions' overall strength. For these examples, I'm going to be using bot lane because it has a lot of similar champions while also having one of the smallest champion pools in League of Legends. When plotting the champion's pick rate compared to their win rate, we can see a few trends. The color of the dots have no bearing, and they're just used to differentiate the points, especially when they're closer together, as on the left side of the plot. Furthermore, there's two black lines that represent 50% win rate going horizontally and a 1% pick rate going vertically. Realistically, it probably would have been best to use a weighted average instead of using 50% for the baseline, but I think it's close enough, and there's no data points that really change greatly in relation to the plot. One trend that you can observe from this plot is that the pick rate of champions increases. The win rate of the champion tends to converge to 50%. Of course, there will be some variation in these values, but the general trend can still be seen. I want to readjust my plot now to help spread out the information a little bit better. I'll be using a log scale for the champion pick rate, with the vertical black line still representing a 1% pick rate. This will help spread out the points while losing a bit of the readability when comparing pick rates. Now, I've been talking a lot about these points, but why does it matter? Who cares? I think that this plot can help show what champions are underperforming, and with some extrapolation, you can see a bit about which champions are ones that you should experiment with, and ones that are slightly overperforming. Let's take a look at Kiara's domain, the bottom left. These are champions with much lower pick rates and overall lower win rates. I can't tell you why these champions are picked, if they are good, and even if just bad players are picking them. These champions just do not perform well. One limiting factor is that their pick rates are low, and it's hard to make a good assumption on the champion based on low sample size. I would say champions like Syndra and champions like her are not necessarily worth your time to pick up or put time into, especially when playing bot lane. Typically, when champions have lower pick rates, it's only the champion mains and dedicated players who play that champion. But even if they're not performing, it's hard to justify them as being good. Now let's move on to those with low pick rates but high win rates. Again, I believe that these champions are generally played by people who know how to play these champions and are dedicated towards them. For these, in some cases, I see them as being paired with specific champions and therefore having higher win rates. There are four that stick out to me: Karthus, Sion, Tahm Kench, and Heimerdinger. I know all these champions can be played in this role by themselves, but typically they're seen with another champion in the bot lane, like Senna. Other champions in this region are what I believe can be considered cheese champions or champions that should be experimented with. Examples of these are like Swain, Veigar, and Ziggs. I think they're overall good champions, but just underexplored. Now, before we move on to the rest of the champions, I want to talk about a concept I would like to call the flavor of the month, where specific points in time have certain champions become really popular for one reason or another. When champions become more popular, it is obvious that people who have no idea how to play the champion correctly will bring their win rate down. Let it also be known that champion's popularity has no indication of how strong a champion is. Some examples of this are Lee Sin and Thresh. No matter how good or bad they are, people will always pick them. Now, back to the flavor of the month. Let's say a champion has a very high pick rate. I would say that many people from different ranges of skill and knowledge are playing that champion. But who would you say is playing a champion if pick rates are lower? Again, like earlier, I would argue that those are the dedicated players of that champion. One example of this is Trick2G. He was playing Udyr almost his entire career before the popularity spikes like Pharaoh Flare and most recently Chemtank. Now, when only dedicated players play their champ, I would argue that win rates of these champions should increase. Theoretically, if only Riven 1-Trix played their champion, she would have a much higher win rate than it currently is. Now, looking back at the plot, let's ignore the black lines and think of how a point may move if only the champion mains pick that champion. I would argue that it would move towards the upper left. This means that somewhere along the plot, there is a frontier of sorts which indicates how a champion win rate should move if you are putting in the time for that champion. Back to the plot points. One that I would argue is Draven. I believe that he's a very good champion. Even though his win rate does not indicate it, I think his overall win rate is being dragged down by the general high play rate. If only the dedicated Draven players played the champion, he would depict as being much better. Now this is great. I'm saying that putting time into a champion will give you a better win rate. Bet you're looking at this plot and making your own assumptions. But this ignores one very big point that many people bring up. This goes off the assumption that all champions are skill expressive, or in this case, more experience expressive. I assume that if you play more Draven and know how to play Draven, you will have a better win rate than someone who doesn't. This is true in most cases, but not to all the same extreme. I would argue that a champion like Malphite is much less skill expressive than a champion like Qiyana, and this should be accounted for. Now that we have this in mind, we know that typically a champion's observed win rate is lower than it appears when accounting for pick rate, but by how much depends per champion. Now we can see what champions are truly overperforming. But first, I'm going to adjust the lines a little bit to help represent and portray it a little bit better. I added a red vertical line to represent a 5% pick rate. This cutoff is arbitrary, but it helps focus more on the really popular champions. From now on, when I refer to top right and bottom right, this will be talking about champions right of the red line. I would argue that champions on the top right are overperforming champions. This is for three main reasons: high pick rate, high win rate, and skill growth. When I say skill growth, I'm using this term to refer to the trend that champion mains are just better and have a higher win rate. This would also mean that the more time you put into a champion, you should get better results. These champions in the top right are the OP champions, ones that you meta fanboys should play. They are generally better than average, and these champions are the ones that are carrying the players and padding their stats. Champions like MF, Jhin, Vayne, Tristana are all doing especially well, even for having high pick rates. Your room to improve only increases the win rate ceilings for these champions, so I believe that these champions are the S tier picks. Now you might be asking, what about the champions in the bottom right? I believe that those champions are the good champions still, but one main difference is that they are not carrying their users. Instead, they need someone good to pilot them. Looking at two specific champions, Lucian and Aphelios, they both have many weaknesses, and people who don't know how to pilot champions will get punished much harder. Other ones like Varus and Kate are also good, but it seems hard to justify them when there are so many other champions that are just doing better. If you put in the time to these champions, I believe that they can shine, but playing around their certain weaknesses is one factor that may prevent people from playing them correctly. Now, I want to look at two champions, Ezreal and Kai'Sa. I want to call them outliers. They are so head and shoulders above all the other champions, it is amazing to see where they are. With about a 22 and 25% pick rate respectively for the two being the number 1 and number 2 highest pick rate champions in the entire game. With the amount of players dragging down their win rate, it hides the fact of how strong they really are. This transitions well into another topic I want to talk about in the future: win rates across ranks. Freak did a great video on this, and you should go watch his video for some great information on it. I want to show how good these champions are. These two champions have what I call typical ranked distribution win rates, meaning as the rank goes up, their win rate goes up. But this, in combination with their pick rates, expresses how truly OP they are. In Diamond Plus, they are the two most picked champions and still have such high win rates. This indicates that they are overtuned. If everyone can play them with success, they are good champions. Not balanced, but good. These graphs from Lolitech show different win rates and pick rates across the different ranks, and the vertical red line indicates the most recent patch, 11.11. What can be seen here is that for these champions, win rates and pick rates are positively correlated when comparing across the different ranks. The ranks with the highest pick rates also have the highest win rates. This does not show any clear causation effects, but it's interesting to note, especially when this is not a trend that occurs for all champions. Now, let's wrap this up for now. Who is this information for and why is it important? I want to take a look at some trends in League of Legends data and try to paint a picture of what people should be playing if they want to win. Which champions are champions that require dedication, and which are some that people should experiment with. I know I only used bot as an example, but this was due to the small champion pool, and I believe that this idea still applies to the other lanes too. For example, Set. He is the highest pick rate top laner while still having an overall 51.3% win rate across all ranks. He is mega OP. Abuse it while you can. Same thing with Wukong. High pick rate, high win rate. Use this information in accordance with your rank to help pick some OP champions that you should be trying. Don't be listening to the propaganda of the people saying play Annie, play Garen since they are simple. Play those Set and Katarinas since they're OP. The champion mains just don't want them to get nerfed. Here, I'm showing the 5 different roles and the 5 most popular champions associated with all of them. We'll start off with top lane. Champions like Set, Mordekaiser, Garen, and Nasus, with all relatively high pick rates, have pretty high win rates, with Mordekaiser being the lowest. I think these champions are overperforming and will probably see nerfs. Looking in the jungle, there's a similar story with Mastery, Xin Zhao, and Shaco, where they all have pretty high win rates and very high pick rates. In mid lane, the story is not as cut and clear. There's champions like Zed, Akali, and Sylas who have lower win rates and high pick rates. This means that you're going to need to put more time to these champions for you to get results. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't play them, I'm just saying that there's more work involved. I already went over bot lane, so I'll skip that for now. For support, there are clear champions with high pick rate, high win rate, like Lux, Leona, Lulu, but they're not as extreme as other roles, so I wouldn't pay too much attention to them. Lastly, I want to show the top 10 highest win rate champions in the entire game, across all ranks. These champions, I believe, are the sleeper OP champions. I guess some of them have high pick rates like Wukong, Nasus, Xin Zhao, Brand, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't play them. A lot of them, like Zilean, Annie, Yorick, Malzahar, they have lower pick rates but still very high win rates. Now to completely wrap up this video, I'll just summarize what I believe that I went over. Champions with low pick rates but low win rates, I believe that those champions you should stay away from. They're not worth the time you invest and don't show very much promise. Champions with high win rates but low pick rates are champions that can be considered cheese, or maybe there's a reason why they have high win rates, but I believe that they should be experimented with. They have good potential. Champions with low win rates but high pick rates are champions that you might need to put in some time to get some results. They're not bad champions. They're just slightly underperforming because of maybe 1 or 2 weaknesses that you should play around. They require some skill, and I believe that you can get results with them as well. Now, champions with high pick rates, high win rates are overperformers, the OP champions. Those are the go-to champions that you should play if you want to win. They're OP in one way or another, and it shows. Use this in accordance with your rank. All of this information was done on all ranks, so it might not apply to you directly, but let's say you're gold, you should check the stats for the gold ranks. If there's any other topics that you want me to go over, please do let me know. I'm completely open to looking into more different aspects of the game, and any feedback would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation. See you next time.